Hi, I'm Jerry Ford and welcome to my studio and welcome to my Thursday night mini classes. Tonight we're going to be talking about cording or piping. They're both about the same thing. And yes, you can purchase it pre-made in the stores. However, when you purchase it, your sizes and your colors and your fabrics are limited. And also, if it's made of cotton, you don't know that fabric is going to shrink or not. You can make cording in any width, size you want. You can use great big thick cording for upholstery. It's great for quilting, and tonight we're going to specifically talk about using the cording or the piping in order to put it inside the binding of a quilt. But it can also work very well with home dec, with garment sewing, with craft sewing. Anytime you want to add a little bit of pizzazz to a seam or to the edge of a piece of something you're sewing. So here's what you need. First of all, you're going to need your cording, and there's different thicknesses. This one is a 5mm wide. Then I've got, well, this is supposed to be a 3mm wide. However, my husband took my 3mm wide cording that I thought I had a lot of, and he used it to tie up trees. So I have to go to the store. Okay, that's about 3mm. Then this kind is a 2mm, which is called mini cording or mini piping, and this works really well. It's cotton. And then for micro piping, I like to use this number 3. It's either crochet or tatting thread. This one is made by Presencia. I ordered off the internet, and it's called a number 3 Finca thread. So this is what I'm going to use for my quilting to really add some pizzazz to it. This one and this kind. Okay, now let's start with the very teeny tiny one. And the little tiny one, I tend to use a pin tuck foot because the grooves are very, very small. Then you have my mini piping, which will handle it up to the 3mm, maybe the 2mm wide. Then you have a conventional piping foot, which will handle everything. It says up to 5mm, but once you wrap that cording in fabric, it's bigger than 5mm, so this doesn't work really well. And for the 5mm and bigger, then I will use a zipper foot. I like this type of zipper foot because the needle and the cording can come right up alongside of it, where this is the kind that comes with the machine and it always gets caught right here. Okay, and of course then you're going to need some fabric strips. You can't make it too wide. You can always make it too narrow, like if you were to try to use this one on this thick stuff, it just isn't going to work. You've got nothing to sew on. So you want to leave at least a 1/2 inch. So I usually will make my cording about 1 inch bigger than the width. So this is about almost 1.5 inches. This would be appropriate for this size. So in that way, once you wrap it, you have enough room here in order to sew. I'd rather have this too big and trim it back, and I'll show you how to trim that in a little bit, than have it too small. So this one would work for this, and this I would need the zipper foot. Okay, and then like this tiny little 1/2 inch one is absolutely perfect for this little narrow stuff because it doesn't need much fabric. That gives me more than enough. There's a little tiny one. Okay, so or anything in between, depending on, you want to make it bigger than what it needs. Like I said, I'd rather have it too big than too small. You can also take your fabric strips and either cut them on the straighter grain if you're doing a straight quilt or straight edge, but if your seam or your quilt or anything's got a curve to it, you're going to want to use bias for your wrapping. To make the piping itself, I'm going to use wash away thread in both the needle and the bobbin, and I like to use Vanish Extra by Superior Threads. It takes a little more steam to dissolve it away. But why I use this is because if you don't sew it perfectly straight in your final seam line, you see the thread showing through, that's unsightly. So if you use this, you just hit it with a good shot of steam, let it sit for a minute, maybe brush it a little bit, and it's gone. So this is the secret. One problem with this is that it gets brittle if it's exposed to humidity and moisture. So you want to store this and any bobbins that you keep in a airtight Ziploc bag in order to prevent it from breaking down. It does break a lot, but that's okay because this isn't going to stay with it. So little threads don't need to be so carefully trimmed away. Okay, so I'm going to start with the zipper foot. Now, the reason I don't like this zipper foot is once it's wrapped, I can't get close with this foot. I can't get the foot close enough because it's got that ridge. That's why it helps to have this type of zipper foot where it's flat against one edge. Okay, and I'm just using a straight stitch, and I've got my needle, or this position, because both of these will move. Your needle position moves on this machine, but not all machines. And then this also moves back and forth to accommodate the width. Usually I will anchor it with a stitch or two. I'll just put the needle down. My stitch length is about 2.5 millimeters. So I just put this in the middle and just give it a little push with your fingernail and just stitch it. There you go. See, it creates really nice piping. And to apply this piping, as this and all piping is going to apply to the fabric about the same way. Okay, so I have two pieces of fabric. I'm going to put these right sides together. I'm not going to trim this, but usually I would trim this to the width of the seam that I need. There we go. And then see, it's perfect the first time. Now, granted, to sew this together, I used wash away thread, but usually at this point when I put it together, that's when I switch to regular thread. And I can't see any, but sometimes you will see that basting thread when you assembled your piping. See, like right there? Well, I'm not going to tear that out. I'm just going to hit it with steam and it'll just dissolve away. So this is using the thick piping. This is not one I would normally use with a quilt. This is going to be usually for upholstery. It's just too thick for a quilt. Unless you have decided to face it, then that could be an interesting facing. So this would be, if you were instead doing a faced quilt, you could trim this and then sew it in on the quilt and it would be fine. But like I said, this is a little too thick for quilting. Okay, let's try the next size. For this, we're going to change out the foot because I don't need a zipper foot anymore. I will put the ankle back on. And then give that a little tighten. Now let's do the regular purl and piping foot, which is the larger size. And you can use this to both apply the piping as well as to create the piping. Okay, and that just snaps on. When you have a foot that does not have a groove, if you try to sew with it, you're going to get a jam. So one trick is to just lower your presser foot, lower your needle, and pull it through, and now your thread is under the foot without a problem. Okay, now if we were sewing this one again or sewing it on, you're going to find this is too thick. Yes, I know I'm on the wrong side, but it's okay. See, that's just too thick. Now, if I were, so say I was sewing this on, Okay, this can't move, so your needle must move. So in that case, I would use my plus or minus with a straight stitch and move that needle to the other side. Okay, and let's see how this would work. It does work, but I feel it dragging a little bit. Actually, it's working okay as a single layer. Yes, you can use this one. You can't use this for the really wide stuff, but you can use this for the narrow. And notice it did it about a millimeter closer, so you actually got tighter cording. And then let's see if it works if we try to put it together. Let's see what happens. Okay. It's a little too thick. See, it's starting to push that top fabric forward. It's pushing really hard and I'm getting rippling. See that rippling happening a little bit? So this one actually would do better applying with the zipper foot. It's fine for creating it, but this works better on the narrower, the 3 millimeter. I did a decent job, but it did, see it did. Here was my top. See, these were both the same length of fabric, but the fact that it was pushing so hard, it stretched this top layer. And see, it even made it kind of curve. So this is not the ideal choice for this width of binding. Okay, now going on to the 3 millimeter. Usually I will use this foot, which is the 3 millimeter. And it fits inside the piping, inside the trench. And then I'm going to move that needle in until that needle is right in front. Start to stitch it. And then come along. Fold it in the middle. Okay, that worked fine. Okay, here's the problem. See how that, I was too close. So I'm going to actually raise that. And I'm going to leave this in the same place, but I'm going to move that needle over some more. I'm not taking it out because I'm just going to hit it with water and it'll be fine. There, I just moved that over. That's why you always have to do a test sample. All right, and so now it's good. So actually it's sewed in the middle of it, but you know what? You would sew it in to your seam. You'd line up the ends. You could feel the trench, so therefore your cording is going to just float in that trench and stay straight for you. See in there. Now see, that's flat, but here's some water. I'll just do a little. Now this is going to dissolve. I didn't change the thread. Okay. But look, see, it's completely disappeared. That stitching is gone. Now the whole seam's going to fall apart, but I didn't change the thread. But so you can see now that where I was wrong actually just totally just dissolved away, and therefore you would be left with a good piece of piping into your seam. Okay, this I would use on a larger quilt, and I'm going to use this size on a quilt that I'm making. I'll show it to you guys later at a different Thursday night or at club. Okay, Next size. This is the little 2 millimeter, and it is a perfect size. And this time I'm going to use this to make it. Fold it in half. And this may be too big. Yes, this is actually too big. See, I've got an awful lot of play. My needle, yeah, I could move my needle, but this is wanting to see how that goes from side to side inside of there, so that's not going to work well. So I'm going to switch out to this mini piping foot. And again, this one's got a notch, so we don't have to worry about pulling those threads underneath. Okay. Okay. There. And get that closer. And I can get this needle closer. Got it about 5 millimeter wide stitch, and of course you have to, one has to be used on a machine where you can move your needle. It's not gonna, it doesn't work on my straight stitcher because you can't move that needle position. Okay, see, now this is giving me a beautiful mini piping, and I am going to be using this one today with the serger piping that I made. And look at the nice piping it makes. Really nice. I'm just going to lay my ends together inside the seam, and I'll show you what this piping looks like finished. Okay, again, this piping is going to lay right into that channel. So I'm using the same stitch width or needle position width. Okay, put this straight. And it makes it very easy to guide because that cording's just going to ride the channel. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? That is so tiny and it looks so nice. This I do use in quilts. And see over here where you see that, well, it's stitching. Yeah, that's from the last one. Okay, see how there's that little bit of stitching that you can, if you really look hard, you can see that stitching. This is going to go into quilt binding. And look at, just to show you what quilt binding will look like with that. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, now for the micro piping, and I do love this stuff. And for that, this is too big. It's too wide. So now we're going to go to the pin tuck foot. And this one is another foot that does not have a slot. So I'm going to pull the threads under the foot. Okay. Now this, you determine how wide you want your seam. Now I have marked where this is 1/4 inch from this side of the foot. So if you're going to be putting this into a 1/4 inch seam, here is a mark that I made. And then this is 3/8, which is my preferred binding width. I'm going to put this inside of a trench, like right here. See? This is perfect spot for if I were to use 3/8 of an inch seam or binding. If I'm using a 1/4 inch, I would use that side. Let's do 1/4 inch just for the sample. Okay, for this micro piping, you want to take your piece of fabric and press it in half lengthwise, or at least finger press it. You want to start with a longer tail than what you need. Fold this over. Hold this like this and give this, take your fingernail and push it up for at least a little bit, of maybe an inch or two. Okay, I'm going to be using 1/4 inch, so the groove is between these two lines. And usually what I like to do is I like to put the center of the groove before and after it so that I know where it is, because it can get away from you. Pull this straight back. At this point, you should be able to pull your thread. If you can't pull your cording, it's caught funny somewhere. And then start stitching. Okay. Then once it's anchored, I'm going to really push on that into the center and let the foot guide it in. It's hard to get it off because this cording, see, it's riding right in that channel. Gave you really nice micro piping. Usually I will start by putting this on the top. This on the, and you can actually just start it right in the same spot. If you have it trimmed and you're using 1/4 of an inch, this will be fine. I don't know if I've got it or not. We'll see. I did not trim this. It's going in the right place. I think we're good. Perfect. Look at that. Little tiny micro piping, and if you're seeing a little bit of stitching, again, just a little bit of water, and look at that tiny piping. And I love that. That is just so cute. Okay, let's talk about trimming the piping. So I have two tools that I like to use, and both of these will work with either 1/2 inch seams or it will work with 1/4 inch seam. I don't have one that'll work with 3/8. So this one is actually my favorite one. This one is called the Groovin Piping Trimming Tool by Susan K. Cleveland. And I've seen it on different sites, but you can also get it at www.piecesbewithyou.com. This will accommodate this micro piping and the mini piping, either one. So this, I won't trim them both, but so this is that micro piping. So you would just slide this inside here, pull it to the left, push it down, pull it to the left to straighten it out, and then you would trim it. And see, that trims it rather nicely, and there we go. And see, that trims it. That helps you to line up those seams, because now we're using 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now this one works just as well, except it's a little shorter. However, if you look here on the edges, it accommodates 3 different sizes of cording. So this one doesn't seem to work as well on the micro, but it will work on the mini. And this is a little bit thicker for the 3mm, and this is for like the big one. So like with the mini, this little mini micro one that I did, it would be this whole 1/4 of an inch. And my biggest complaint about this is it's just too short. And this one's made by Simplicity Studio. And it's a little hard to see through the smaller. It's hard to see that. In fact, I don't like this at all. It's too small. I like this one for this little tiny stuff. When it's a little bigger like this, it'll work a little easier. Again, I'm using this smaller piping, and I'm just pull it to the left a little bit as you push down to make that even. And here's the other problem I have, is that you have to put it doesn't want to cut because I can't get close to it. It's so high, I can't get close to it. I would have to use a 60mm blade. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with this one at all. but this one works really nicely for the big large one in this. Again, you're going to have to use that 60 millimeter wide cutter. And see, this one fits in really nice, but again, I can't, let's see if it'll let me close. No, it will not let me close to it. Okay, here's a bigger one. So this is 60 millimeter. So you'd start down here. When you get to the end, you just slide it up, keep going, and there we go. It's trimmed it nicely, and then now you could put it together, and you got a 1/4 of an inch here, so you line up with the edges of the fabric knowing you're going to do a 1/4 inch seam, and you just follow it in order to put the piping. Okay, so let's work on this one. Remember this from the last series? Okay, I have 4 strips of fabric. I cut them about a little over an inch. About 1 1/4 inches is what I cut them. Then I folded them in half lengthwise and gave them a little bit of press. I'm going to be using this 2 millimeter wide cording, and I'll just take it out as I need it. And I'm going to be using this micro piping, the mini piping foot. I'm still using the wash away thread in the bobbin and in the needle. So I'm just going to place this in the center, about 2 inches. Put this in the groove there, and let me see, I'll do this first one. Let's make sure that it's, put this down the middle and then give it a finger press. Okay, I'll just keep going on, and I will go ahead and do this for the other 3. See, like that looks absolutely right. And then over here, it's caught in the middle. I don't have too much play here. It's actually just, I could get it maybe another stitch closer, but I could try that when I go to stitch it on. Okay. I will be back when I've stitched all 4 of these strips. Now I'm going to trim it using my piping trimmer. Okay, so I will start it here, thread it in. Okay, start at one end. Okay, that's ready to apply. And look, I have a perfect 1/4 inch seam right here, ready to apply this to the quilt. And I'll go ahead and trim all of these. Okay, look at these. These are just perfect the way they are. And if I use a 1/4 inch seam, that is going to be just right, just where I want it to go. Now, I could use the same foot in order to base these on, but I'm going to, you know how I am about my binding. I'm very picky about the binding, so I'm going to glue these in first. And I'm just going, I'll do 2 sides at a time. So you're going to glue your binding in place. If this is wanting to switch, stick some of this stuff underneath of it. You're good to go. This is great stuff. Okay, so I'm going to place this right on the edge and heat set it into place. You don't want to stretch it because you don't want this to pull. Just let the strip go where it wants to. Like here, if you're worried about these layers separating, you can either, well, they're pretty much glue basted already, but the ends, you could always just put an extra set of glue underneath. and glue your layers together, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. Okay, then set this. Okay, do these ends really good. I don't want to have too much bulk where these cross, so I'm going to take a little of this cording and pull it out and clip it short. I'd rather have it flat on the corners, about right there. Pull that flat. There we go. Glue that back. See, it's flat right about where the seam is, and that way you're not adding any extra bulk to these seams. Okay. And I'll do the same thing on this side. Probably clip this straight and grab that cording from inside, pull about 1/4 of an inch out, or a little more than 1/4 of an inch. Here we go. And pull that out and snip it, so that when I pull that flat, it's flat right here. Right on the corner, it's flat. Okay. And it's good to go. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite side. At first, pull that cord where you're going to start it. Pull extra out and cut it. And pull it back. Okay, that's good. I can do the same thing here. Do this side, glue this side and this side. I am using a Roxanne glue-basted container that I have already used all the glue out of it, but I like the container, so I refilled it with Elmer's washable school glue. It works just as well. See, it's flattening it a little bit, but you know, it's going to fluff back out. Okay, I want to remove this cording from about 1 inch away. Let's see if that's enough. Yep, it's flat right. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and glue the last bit. And it's not going to shift. It's going to be fine. And then trim these even with the corners. I do the same thing on the opposite side. Just crisscross here, and see where they crisscross, that's flat. It's not going to tie up the the machine as you're trying to sew the corner with the binding. I'm going to go ahead and finish all 4 sides. I'm also going to prepare my binding, and I've cut my binding 2 1/8 inches wide. I will fold it in half and create enough binding to go all the way around, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have prepared my binding. It's ready to go, and I have enough here, so I'm going to start about here. I'm going to apply the glue right to the end, and I'm going to set this about right there. Heat set it into place. And then once again, like I normally do, bring this straight across, right at the corner, and this is going straight. Press it, and then I'm going to mark it with the white chalk just so we can see it. because this is dark. Okay, open this up. And right on that chalk line, right on that fold, I'm going to put a chalk line there. All right, I have replaced my wash away thread with black regular sewing thread. And now we're going to just sew this into place. I'm going to put this right at the edge. I can feel the channel. Okay, there's my channel right there. Put that right in the channel. And this is 1/4 of an inch from this edge to here. It is 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to just sew. Move that stitch length to about 2.5 millimeters and just stitch. Probably need to put in a new needle. Going to stitch until it just hits that line. Go to the corner. Check it. Oh, look at how beautiful. That is absolutely lovely. Okay, now we go back over here, and this time do just like before. I'm going to fold this over like that. Glue it all the way down, baste it. I have lots of videos that show how to do basting. I'll put a link in the description below to the one I have about how to do binding. This side, I just start stitching at one end. I've got the cording right in that channel. Okay, I'm going to finish the other 2 sides. Let's see what this corner. Oh, wow. Okay, I think this looks really good. I could cut a little closer right there. So I'm going to just stitch over that just a little bit more, just a little closer. Okay, let's see how that looks. Ah, yeah, much better. See that? Able to go over it. And so now when you turn this around and you just simply either hand or machine stitch, and it will look, doesn't that look amazing? Okay. If I wanted to machine stitch it, I could, after I'm done, just pull this over a little more and stitch right in this ditch. Because this piping travels inside this channel, it's perfect. And the thing is with very narrow accenting with quilts, if it's more than a thread off, you're going to see it. So this allows you to stay nice and accurate, and that is a beautiful straight line. So I will go ahead and finish the other 4 sides, and I'll show you how I close it. Okay, I've sewn all the way around. I've gone about 2 inches here, left about a 6-inch gap right there. So I'm going to lay this down flat. I'm going to put a little glue, just a tiny bit of glue, right at the edge of the fold on this initial binding piece. Lay this over top so that it's straight. Heat set it into place. Okay. I'm going to cut the excess off. Okay, here's the inside edge. So I'm going to cut that off a little further. That's all excess. Used for something else. Okay, open this up. Put a little bit of glue on this folded edge on the opposite side. Again, very little, just right along the edge. Okay, then tuck this inside. Fold it up so it's nice and tight. And heat set that into place. Till it's good and dry so it stays together. And That's just a little fiber that's stuck to it now. Okay, and then open it. Take this end and this end, pin it together or clip it. There's a pin. That way it just won't flop in the way. And then open this up carefully. I think this is too tight. A little bit too close. Okay. Opening it. There we go. And over here, open this side. They should be very careful pulling them apart. Can't even see the layers because it's dark. There we go. All right, that looks straight. Find the diagonal. You just sew that right on the line, right on that fold. I'm going to pop the glue, trim it to 1/4 of an inch and finger press it down. Finger press that open. Now that fits nicely. I'm going to just press it and then glue baste it down and then stitch the opening closed. There we go. And now I'm just going to sew from here to here and it's all finished. Then I will take this to, this will take a while. I like to do my bindings, turn them by hand and stitch them down, but that is absolutely lovely. All right, it's already finished. I'm going to go ahead and, I didn't sew the back. It's still just pressed back there. And I'll put a hanging sleeve, and this is ready to go into my door for the Halloween festivities. So anyway, that's all I have for you right now. I'm going to finish off this one. This one I didn't quite get to. I will add it. We're going to go ahead and finish this. We will be back Saturday at club. I will have this finished, or I will have the video finished for how to finish this off using the serger to make the cording for the binding piece. So stay tuned for Saturday. If not, I'll see you next Thursday.